It is just a huge honor for me today to bring on Gary Boyajian, who's been a friend of mine for 30 years. Me, Gary, and Rick Kushner used to always hang out back in the day all the time. He's upon finishing his GPR at St. Joseph's Hospital, New Jersey, Dr. Boyajian purchased an existing general dental practice in Bergen County, New Jersey, plus a building. The practice grew rapidly by utilizing the proper marketing techniques and applying the latest technology in dental procedures. His practice was fee-for-service and accepted high-quality dental insurance. He didn't accept PPO insurance. He felt one of his keys to success was listening to practice management lectures and tapes by Howard Farran, Rick Kushner, also clinical information from Gordon Christensen. In subsequent years, he opened 2 more dental practices in Fairfield County, Connecticut. After many successful years of practicing dentist, Gary retired. While he was in the process of selling his 3 dental offices, he found that multiple dental brokers did not take a hands-on role in the process, as they were not present when he met with the prospective buyers. Furthermore, the majority of the brokers did not get involved in the day-to-day transaction and negotiations as the deal moved forward with contracts, financing, and lease negotiations. As a result of this experience, Gary inspired to start his own dental brokerage firm that would provide unparalleled, amazing, hands-on, 24/7 service, Healthcare Practice Sales, LLC. He is one of the few dental practice brokers that is a dentist and also has in-house staffing consisting of 2 CPA accountants. They deliver results to make sure your deal goes closing table. They stay in constant contact with every party involved in the transaction, including banks, attorneys, and accountants. As a result, you will not have to handle any aspects of the deal on your own. The sale practice will go very smoothly because they stay on top of everything. When I'd be out there, now Gary's in Montvale, New Jersey. He's about 35 minutes away from New York City. And whenever I'd lecture out there, I'd go see Gary because he's an amazing mind to pick. And he was amazing. He had a limo and a limo driver. Back in the day when the damn back in the day when the phone was actually tied to the limousine. And we would just drive around and you would just sit there and you were just wheeling and dealing dental offices. You knew the dentists, they all knew you. I mean, you're truly amazing. So how are you doing, Gary?
All is well, having a wonderful time, a little frigid weather right now.
So your website is dentalpracticeguide.com. By the way, my 4 boys think of you as they used to call you a pretzel man when they were all little, 2, 4, 6, 8. You were always sending us these big old barrels of chocolate-covered pretzels, and oh my God, they loved it. So I think of you as the limo man. My kids think of you the chocolate-covered pretzel man. Do you still eat chocolate-covered pretzels? Is that your secret to looking so good?
Whatever it takes. A lot of those pretzels are handmade, and they still make them coming out of Pennsylvania. I'll be sending you a package soon.
A little logistics. So let's start off. People your age and my age, where our kids are in their 20s, they read Dentaltown magazine. It's these young millennials that are listening to podcasts. I always ask my homies, shoot me an email, howard@dentaltown.com. Tell me your name, where you live, what country, how old you are. It's about 25% of them are in dental school, and the other 75% are under 30. Only get about 1 email a month from somebody who's old as me. And so right now, I know what my homies are thinking. They're working at Aspen or Heartland, and they think, well, Gary, I can't buy a practice because I got $250,000 in student loans. What would you say to that millennial who's not even looking at a dental practice to buy because she thinks she has too many student loans?
Right now, the majority of banks, if you have a practice that cash flows, majority of banks are financing 100%. Not even 100%. They'll actually give 105%, so they'll give about 5% working capital. Money is readily available for anyone that wants to buy a practice. If you have a fair credit score and you're actively working as an associate now, you're going to get financing. When we do deals, the least of our troubles are financing. Money's always available.
And what banks are you working with?
We work with Bank America, TD Bank. There, of course, is Wells Fargo. There's about 6 different banks that really can deliver and produce. We have a small bank near us called First Hope, Valley Bank. So there's quite a few, but the money is available if the doctor is ready. And if the doctor has any credit issues or financial concerns, sometimes we work through the money brokers who have about 200 sources that they could funnel towards us. But historically, our problems are not getting the financing. Money is available
So they see all these commercials on TV, Credit Karma, check your credit deal. Is that real world? I mean, do they need a credit score? You know, you've seen those commercials.
Well, generally, the average doctor does not have financial trouble. If they do, they let us know right away, and we try to work with them. Banks are looking for credit scores of approximately 680 or above. Vast majority of doctors qualify for a loan. It's not a problem.
680 and above, and what's the high? What's the scale from 1 to what? What's the highest?
Usually, it can go up to 800. A good score is anywhere in the 700s. That's generally not an issue.
The highest you can get is 800.
I think it's about 800 on the FICO score. Yeah.
That means my ex-wife must have an 801. You just can't have that much cash and not have an 801. You use a term they don't understand. You said they'll loan 100% of the practice, but they'll go 105%, 5% working capital. They don't know what working capital means. What is working capital?
Working capital is money that you'll be using in the practice for cash flow, because initially you're not getting all the insurance money in. You want to do a little extra advertising. You don't have as much. You want those extra dollars to be flexibility to carry overhead. So you have extra cash flow. That's what the extra 5% is for. Average practice may sell 65 to 72% of 1 year's gross. Or if you're working with the private equity groups, 4.5, 5 times EBITDA, 4 to 5 times EBITDA. But generally with the doctors, we just try to explain if it's a normal overhead, practice is selling for somewhere between 65 to 72%. But those numbers are all going up. Percentages are going up.
Okay, this is okay. You said EBITDA, so they don't know what they don't know what EBITDA means. Explain EBITDA. You said 4 to 5 times EBITDA if you're a venture capitalist.
It's really, EBITDA is essentially your net cash flow coming out of the practice, and it stands for EBIT plus depreciation plus amortization. So you add your total expenses due to depreciation, amortization back to your company's EBIT. It's a measure of earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Because remember, yes, when you file your income taxes, there's all these weird things. Like there's a deduction for children, correct?
Depreciation, and so it's an IRS baloney thing. But it's 4 to 5 times EBITDA, or 65 to 72% of gross collections.
That's right? About your average sale, but in the end, the practice will sell for what the bank is willing to loan, what the buyer thinks it's worth, and what the seller is willing to let it go for. That's essentially, because this is a seller's market. So that combination has to be there. I've sold practices as high as 90%. We sold one 6 months ago, 90%, because it was in the community that the doctor wanted to be in. The seller had read.
These fundamentals are all macroeconomic. You and I have been in this game for 3 decades. Why is it sometimes a seller's market? Why is it sometimes a buyer's market? Why is it a seller's market right now?
It's a seller's market because the average buyer, I would say the word is fear. They're worried about their student loans. It's a more conservative buyer, I find nowadays, so the buyers are not opening up from scratch. That's the biggest hold up right now. They have fear. They're not opening from scratch. Although the money's there, they're afraid to open up from scratch. So therefore, they're waiting for about 3 to 4 years post graduating, and then beginning to look for a practice to purchase. Also, you have a lot of females in dentistry, and are not sure what their future's like as far as starting a family, or if the spouse is going to be moving a job, so they don't know exactly where they'll wind up. So you do have that happening also, but it is a seller's market, not a buyer's market.
So what would you say to a 25-year-old girl who says, I have my heart set on, I want to go to a certain town in the middle of Kansas? Should she buy an existing or start a scratch? How should she wrap her mind around that decision?
It's a personal decision, but historically you're far better off buying an existing practice because, first of all, to build a practice is going to take you 6 months and a lot of aggravation, no income during those 6 months. An existing practice, you have the staff is there, equipment is working, you have a patient load, you have cash flow. So that combination gives you some level of security. They're far better off buying an existing practice, and if they're not pleased with the equipment or the appearance of the office, they could slowly renovate. But it's the cash flow, which is the key, and existing patients. It's very expensive to get a new patient in your chair, whereas an existing practice, you have staff and patients.
And you know, my thinking on that is like I've seen so many kids, and they want to go back to a small town Iowa, and there's 8 dentists. And old man McGregor's selling his practice, and he thinks, I don't want to pay that. I want to start my own. So that town had eight practices. So now he starts number 9, and he thought he went to this town with a bunch of eight old coggers that are open Monday through Thursday to 5. But then that old guy sells a practice to another highly energetic, motivated 30-year-old kid.
Right.
So he could have just replaced one. So you got a pizza with 8 slices in a town of 5,000. You
Yes.
could have just bought one of those slices, but you didn't. Now you added a 9th slice, and then that 65-year-old guy who was winding down to nothing just sold it to some highly motivated married guy with 3 kids who's going to go out there and just crush it. So yeah, buying is a lot less risk. And speaking of buying, Gary, how come you're 35 minutes from Wall Street and you see massive mergers and acquisitions, M&A activity? And it seems like every time I know a dentist who's doing $3 to $4 million a year, it's because over the 30 years, every time the old guy across the street retired, he bought the practice and merged it into his own. How come Wall Street sees so much merger and acquisition activity, and cottage industry dentistry doesn't utilize that tool?
Well, there are dentists that do constantly attempt to purchase a practice, but remember, to purchase charts or a practice close by, if you want to incorporate into your practice, you're looking for something in the suburban area within a 5-mile radius. Those doctors that are selling generally want to sell their practice and equipment and location. So in a suburban area, there aren't that many, so to speak, chart sales available. Maybe in Manhattan a little bit more so, but once again, they want to sell, because a chart sale is going to sell for a lot less, maybe 35% of 1 year's gross, whereas a practice on location with equipment, you're at 65 to 72%. Average numbers, again, those numbers are going up. So there isn't that much readily available practices. Remember, you have a demographic situation, you can only pull so far. That's one of the issues, or unless you buy a satellite office.
So this industry really was started 40 years ago by Alan F. Thornburg, who started AFCO, and he recommended something that a lot of people find very controversial, and that is, say this 25-year-old millennial wants to buy a practice, so she gets her broker, and then the dentist selling, she gets her broker, and then the brokers go to war. And Alan said, you know what? You need dual representation. You need the broker selling the practice representing the seller and the buyer. Then, of course, every lawyer in town says, well, that person can't represent 2 people. They got to represent one. What do you think of a broker dual representation like AMCO does, or like AFCO does, versus each party has their own representation?
It's very simple. I don't believe in the dual representation platform. It doesn't work because, for example, you take your contract, right? If you start working on your contract and do allocations of purchase price, 80% goodwill, maybe 10% for equipment, the higher the goodwill, it's a benefit towards the seller. The lower the goodwill is a negative to the buyer. It takes too long to pay that off as far as depreciating. So you just start off with the contract, you're diametrically opposed. What's good for the buyer is not good for the seller. So you have to represent one or the other. We are representing the seller, but at the same time, we're bringing the buyer to him to meet. If the deal doesn't work out, we bring the buyer to another seller. But ultimately, our responsibilities or our fiduciary responsibility is to the seller. So you can't have dual representation. And just as any attorney says, it doesn't work. It's either one or the other. But at the same time, a broker is in between trying to negotiate for both parties to move them forward. And that's what we do. We get very intimately involved with the deal right until the very, very closing, which separates us from others. We will, on the day one, we'll bring the buyer to introduce to the seller. We'll never send the buyer to see the seller alone. You can't do that. You have to be there every step of the way.
And what states do you cover? I mean, people are listening right now from everywhere. What states do you cover?
Well, we're exceedingly busy right now. We're on the 4 states of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. But we are branching out to maybe Florida and other states around the country. And there's just tremendous potential out there for us, and that's what we plan on doing in the next coming year. We've already started. just changed our website, but we're going to go more of on a national basis very soon. Because
And if
we
someone and if someone has a question in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, or Florida, what's the best way to contact you?
just give us a ring or email, and we can get right on it. We'll answer them
What
immediately.
what is that ring number and email?
Phone number is 201-663-0935. Or you could send us an email at performdent, PERFORMDENT @AOL.com. We're changing that. It's going to be a Gmail address soon, but you could use that for now. Or just call us on the phone. It's easy. We'll get right on the phone.
The phone's 201-663-0935. And why are you changing it to Gmail? Just because millennials don't know what AOL means?
Oh, we're just changing our whole platform, man. I was supposed to be retired like 8 years ago. I didn't know how I get into this, but one thing led to another. Someone came up to me and said, "Can you sell my practice?" And we just got crazy after that.
You know, I guarantee you, there's 3 people in the world that'll never retire. You, Rick Kushner, and myself. I mean, you would be too bored. You'd drive your poor wife crazy. If you retired, she'd probably go move to Rio de Janeiro and not tell you where she went.
It's the action which will keep you alive.
So a lot of older people think, should I really be contacting a practice broker, you at dentalpracticeguide.com, or should I just call the big DSOs like Heartland and Pacific and Aspen? I mean, who's buying more practices? When you go to sell a practice, who's buying more? The big venture capital DSOs or the young dentists coming out of school?
It depends on the growth of the practice. Right now, the DSOs are interested. I'm working with a few of them now. Some of them actually pay my commission. Practices over of approximately 900,000 perks their interest. Anything below 800, they're really not looking at. So the majority of practices being sold are like 500,000 gross or below. They're interested in those $1 million plus practices, and if the doctor's willing to stay on. So that's one market. They are paying a higher dollar amount also. So you always need a broker. You need somebody in the middle. And the reason why is because a broker can sense the temperature and sensitivity of the seller. You need that person in the middle. If you go one-on-one and there's a fight, there's an argument, there's nobody to negotiate in between. And you need somebody to move the deal forward constantly. Just gathering the data from sellers is so time-consuming. That's what one of my accountants spends a good portion of his time doing. So as an in-between person, we're able to move the deal, listen to both parties, handle any issues, and handle all the bumps along the road.
You know, when we met 30 years ago with Rick Kushner, you know, there was Orthodontic Centers of America buying all the ortho practices, trade on the New York Stock Exchange, $1 billion valuation. There were a dozen on NASDAQ. They all imploded. Then they disappeared for a decade. Now they're all back, and not one of them could go to Manhattan and do an IPO. I mean, Snapchat could do an IPO, but not Heartland or Pacific. Is that a red flag to you? Because some of these millennials, they think this. They go, I don't know if I want to buy a practice or start a practice because in 10 years, I mean, you know, 30 years ago, all the pharmacists had their own office. Now they all work for CVS and Walgreens. Right. A lot of millennials say, are these DSOs, are they going to take over the whole market? Are we all going to be working at McDentals? Will they all be publicly traded on NASDAQ? Or do you think the same thing's going to happen to them as last time, and that, you know, what goes up must come down?
Well, first of all, the majority of practices being sold, you know, a retiring guy, most of them, you know, are grossing 500,000 or below. DSOs are not interested in those, and they're not buying those. Occasionally, they'll buy the charts, but generally, those practices are being sold dentist to dentist. And the majority of our sales are dentist to dentist. The large ones over $1 million, yeah, the DSOs are involved in that market. How long they'll be around? It depends, because if there's another investment that will return the same, they're only netting about 15 to 19%. But if there's another investment that will return a higher yield, you're going to see that private equity market switch to the new investment. I don't know what that is or when that will come, but that's what DSOs. But if it was truly a 15 to 19% return on investment, they could go to NASDAQ and do an IPO. How come not one of them has done an IPO? Why are they not publicly traded? You know, that I can't answer that question. I can only
Wall
tell
Street
you
can answer it for you.
I think so. But there is one I know, one of the companies I worked with in the past, I forget their name, they've merged a couple times. They've been around for 27 years, I think. They're one of the longer ones. But
Which
most of
one's
them
that?
do
Which
every
one's that?
5 years. They've switched so many times, I forget their name
Is
right
it
now.
Burner, Interdent? Is it
I don't recall, because, it's only been in the last 6 months that I'm starting to work with them a little bit more now, because I'm so engaged with the private practitioner buying another private doctor's office. And that takes up the majority of our time.
what are buyers looking for when they're buying a practice? So if you're an old guy like me listening to you, because some of these old guys think, well, if I want to sell my practice, I invest in digital x-rays or upgrade or this or that. And if you're a young person, a lot of the young people listening to you are just saying, well, Gary, what should I be looking for in a practice? I mean, what are fundamentals where you think, okay, I'm 25, I want to get married, have 2 kids like Gary, so I'm going to be here for 40 years. What should they be looking at or looking for?
Well, the primary thing, obviously, is going to be cash flow. If the practice doesn't cash flow, there isn't enough net profit, the banks are not going to finance it. So it should be cash flow. But a lot of the younger dentists are really focused on location, equipment. Everybody wants digital. Everybody wants digital x-ray. Everybody wants computerization. Those are one of the primary things they look for. Is they have a modern look to it? Are they computerized? Are they digital? And that's some of their main focus initially. But then they get into reality when they speak to their accountant and they deal with the bank. It has to be enough cash flow. Nowadays, what will happen even before they see a practice, they want to see financials. That will be your tax returns, profit and loss, discretionary expenses. It's going to be the lease. It's going to be the payroll. So their accountants and their team is looking on the cash flow very clearly to see what, where they're going to be and how they could grow in the future. But a lot of them are also swayed by a beautiful looking office with incredible equipment and totally that they don't have to renovate. So that has a factor to it. So there's a couple different issues that will go through a buyer's mind. But location, nobody wants to travel too far.
Okay, but when you say location, if you go to dentaltown.com and hit the old hamburger symbol, the 3-line hamburger things, one of them's Townie Perks, and one of the perks we offer is a demographic deal, Real Score. Do you, and there's another one out of Utah. There's only 2 people doing demographics, Real Score and Dr. Demographics out of Utah. When you say location, do you recommend that they spend a few $100 and get a demographic profile of that practice they're looking at?
Oh, they should get a demographic, but the average suburban practice is generally just pulling in from about, 3 to 5 miles away. Manhattan and city, much less than that. They should get a profile of the practice. They are acutely reviewing all data on the practice before they sometimes will see it the first time. So their accountants are reviewing it, their bankers are reviewing it, they're reviewing cash flow, and demographics are important, but nobody really wants to travel too far.
Gary, you keep saying cash flow, but and when they're in dental school, when they're in dental kindergarten, they don't know what cash flow means. What does cash flow mean?
Cash flow
Explain that to a 20-year-old kid in dental school.
Cash flow is going to be the net profit of the practice after you've removed all the discretionary expenses. So what are you going to wind up with in your pocket? And that will vary among practices. We have a practice now that it's like, I don't know how we're going to sell it. He's spending 23% of his gross income. He's doing about $2.8 million. 23% of his overhead is going to advertising. That is
23%?
That's off the boards. It's off the boards. And we thought it was discretionary that was thrown in there. It's not. That's what he's spending because he's not doing a typical return on investment of what those advertising dollars are bringing in. So that is a very difficult practice to sell for us. So again, we say cash flow. Everybody looks at it and say, wait a minute, there's hardly any money left after we finished paying for that. Whereas he should be paying maybe 3 to 8% for advertising. He's paying 23%. Hard to sell that practice.
So go through that. What should when you're looking at dental offices, what should they be spending on advertising, labor, rent, the overhead supplies?
It depends. Now, Manhattan, your labor is going to be, your rent's going to be a lot higher, but your rent's 5 to 10% of your overhead.
Well, 5
let's
to
see.
10%, that's a huge swing. So you're saying 10% Manhattan and downtown
Yeah,
San Fran, but 5%
right. You
everywhere
go down to
else?
suburban, you want to be closer to your 5%. And then you get labor costs, could be 18 to 25% in that range. Advertising, 3 to 8%. But that's a big area that people don't spend enough money on, is advertising. I find it's one of the biggest faults that people don't allocate enough money is to advertising. A young practitioner, they're so focused on the digital pan.
So rent 10% if you're in some huge metro like London, New York, San Fran
Yeah.
downtown. 5% your suburb rural. Labor 18 to 25. What's the highest you've ever seen in labor? I mean, are
Well,
most people within that range, 18 to 25, or a lot of people outside that
they're in the
range?
20 to 25. Now, when you have an older practitioner that's been practicing for 35 years, his it's going to be escalated. His salaries are all escalated because they've been there so long.
Right,
So,
and how high was that as that escalated labor?
yeah, we're talking 30, 32% sometimes. Really up.
I just wrote a column on that. It's called legacy staff. These dentists don't understand that they started 30 years ago when they would submit a crown to Delta for 1,000, and Delta just pay half. You submit a root canal
Right.
for 1,000, they'd pay 80%. Now they've switched around where now they're sending you the fees, but you gave your staff $1 raise every time the Earth went around the sun, and every time the Earth passed Uranus, you gave them another dollar. And you go in these practices, and you're like, okay, your dental assistant's making $30 an hour, and I can replace her in 4 minutes for 14. And so you just got to go to your staff and say, okay, look, it's 32%. Here's all your wages if we get that down to 25%. And then they're all emotionally
Yes.
upset, and then they're butthurt, and they're all mad. And when I talk to these DSOs, you're exactly right. They want bigger than $1 million because they want two doctors in there as an insurance policy. So that if one waxes out, they still got another one. They don't have to close shop. Number two, they want the doctor to stay on. And number three, if they will not, if they have to give all your staff members a decrease in pay, they'll pass on the practice. They'll
Correct.
say they'll
They
say you're the
pay-
founding father. You go fire all these legacy staff people that are from another. I mean, they're still back in the Happy Days and Big Valley and Fonzie, and they don't realize dentistry ain't that way anymore. It's PPO land. And so what do you do when a doctor calls you up and says sell my practice, and he's an old fart with legacy staff and he's got 32% labor?
Well, that's going to come up to the again, where the money's going to come from is from the bank. The bank's going to make a a comment about that. The buyer's going to have some level of comfort. But then you have a situation, the connection to the patients is the staff. So the old patients, that connection is your staff. So you're kind of locked in right away. Occasionally I've seen some of the senior staff members work a few less hours. They're open to it. That eases overhead. But a lot of these doctors are increasing the revenues 20, 25% in the first year if they do their marketing, advertising, work the extra hours. So the revenues are going up. And they've been successful in trying to maintain the staff. Other times, it's some of the staff members are more senior and they move on after a year. So the salaries will stabilize and normalize.
Okay, well, you just said it was important that if I'm a young 25-year-old and I go back to Salina, Kansas, buy this practice, these staff have been there a long time, and you see value of keeping them on, correct?
Yes, you got to keep them on.
Even though, yeah, you got to keep them on, even though they're all paid too high. But how long should the doctor stay on? Some people say, I want the doctor to sell it to me, give me the keys and leave. Other people say, I want you to see all the recalls one time and you introduce me to all the recalls one time for 6 months. What is your thoughts? You want the legacy staff to stay on, even if they're highly overcompensated. How long do you want the selling dentist to stay on?
Well, that's going to depend on the cash flow of the practice. If you're buying a practice that's only grossing $300,000, you don't have financial room for two practitioners. Unless the practice skyrockets right away, there just isn't room. However, if you can focus, and you should be focusing on the growth of the practice ahead of time, websites and everything should be set up ahead of time, not after the practice is started and after the practice is purchased. So there's not enough financial room to keep that doctor on. Unfortunately, yeah, it'd be great if he'd stay on for a long period of time, introduced to everybody, but what's he going to do? Sit there all day, one patient at a time? That's where the staff is key. Remember, the doctor is only one component of this purchase. You have the front desk person who the patient meets for the first time, who've known for 10, 15 years. You have the hygienist. You have the assistant. So there's familiar faces there. You can get by without the doctor after a period of time, but if there's enough, the practice is grossing enough, at least 700,000. There may be room to keep him on part time, keep his name in there, and it does make it a bit easier. Plus, there's always something to learn from him.
Gary, I know you're a humble guy, but you are a freak genius advertiser, and you were advertising back when it was taboo. I mean, when I got out of school, I got in trouble by the Arizona Dental Association because I took a full page ad out in the yellow pages. In fact, he got me a free dinner from the executive director, telling me, "Well, if you had prostate cancer, would you pick the oncologist out of the yellow pages?" And all this stuff like that. But what is advertising? I mean, when you and I started, it was yellow pages. And again, to the listeners, I've known Gary for 30 years. Ask Rick Kushner, who has 300 Comfort Dentals. Gary's a genius advertiser. What's working in advertising in 2017?
Well, it depends on your market. For example, New York City, ZocDoc works quite well. However, you go to the suburbs of New York, ZocDoc doesn't perform as well. Certainly with Google advertising, Google AdWords. However, that's getting extremely expensive. In Manhattan right now, an attorney could pay up to $50 a click. It's gotten very, very expensive. But the beauty of Manhattan, for example, you have density there. And ultimately, people make a decision based on gut feeling. You can just go out into the street and meet people. And there's still a market for that. But certainly, it's Google AdWords. It's Google advertising. There's so many. It's all internet. Website is about 85%. I think that's where most of your money is going. It's on the internet. About 85% of your dollars. But it's getting so expensive. However,
so you're saying Google ad? What top to down? What would be your number one return on investment advertising?
Again, that's more of the back end of it now is for the dentist, because once I sell that practice, they're more, involved in it. And I don't get as involved in that to see what the patient flow is coming in as. And if they're spending enough, a lot of them still don't spend enough on advertising. But it's some type of internet-based. Your website is key. The website is going to bring the people in. There's still a small percentage that you can do with direct mail, a small percentage. People have moved so far away from direct mail that very few people are doing it now. But maybe a small percentage of your advertising could go in that direction too. But meeting people direct, face-to-face, all the business owners and so forth, because choosing a dentist can be an emotional connection. On the other hand, it's the PPOs. Some dentists are just joining all the PPOs, bypassing his insurance.
And what do you think of that strategy? What do you think of that strategy, joining all the PPOs?
I'm not a firm believer in it, because once you do that, you get very comfortable with having your chairs filled with PPO patients. You have no empty slots. You're working and working and working at 25, 30% less. And you begin neglecting your marketing, your advertising. I know someone doing that right now. 95% of their office is PPOs, because it was easy to sign up. Your chairs are filled, but your crown fees are 30, 40% less. It's crazy. I have practices in Manhattan that are still fee-for-service. And there's a number of them, believe it or not, that are fee-for-service and are doing exceedingly well.
And what is your definition of fee-for-service?
Fee-for-service.
These doctors, a lot of doctors say, "Oh, I'm entirely fee-for-service. I don't take any PPOs." I'm like, really? You don't take Delta? Because if you go to Delta's website, they say 95% of all the dentists in every state take Delta, and Delta gives you the fee schedule. So is it 95% of all the dentists technically, legally on a PPO?
A true fee-for-service practice has no insurance accounts receivable. That's what a true fee-for-service dental. I have one like this in Manhattan.
So you mean I go to you, I pay for the crown, then you give me the super bill to send off to the insurance?
That's right. They're not involved in it. They'll help you, they'll assist you, but they don't have an accounts receivable in insurance. That is a true practice. But a lot of them that do say they have fee-for-service maybe will accept one plan like Delta Premier. That's about it. And there are still a few of those around. Or you have a practice that the doctor is accepting the only fee-for-service. He may have an associate that is on one of the PPO plans.
Yeah, and now there's some big lawsuits going around some of these states, because now some of these state insurance companies are saying if you're not in network and I go to you and you give me a super bill to bill the insurance and they'll pay me, that they're not going to do that.
It's just, well, you're getting locked into the insurance companies. That's the problem. Most of the young people feel the only way is to join the PPO. And their chairs are filled, but then think about it. I think it was a year or two ago, Delta reduced their fees by like 4% and then 7% the next year. You're locked in, and you never spent the time or the marketing efforts to build your practice. As you've always said, the insurance companies are feeding you fish, whereas you really should be going out and getting fishing poles.
Well, what I never understood is a dentist will not spend 3 to 5% of collections on advertising, but then someone will send them a PPO plan where the fees are on average. The average PPO is 42% less, and you say, "Hey, you want to spend 3 to 5% on advertising?" No. You want to do dentistry 42% cheaper? Sure.
Yeah,
It's like my God, 42%. What do you think the average dentist spends on marketing?
They're probably 2-3%, very little money, and it's the first thing they cut back.
So I would say it's 3 for anybody that's even just remotely trying. So they'll take 42% as the average PPO reduction price. 42 divided by 3, 14 times lower. I mean, advertising is a 14 times better investment. Advertise. You're saying, and then I want to throw in something. You like Google AdWords? What do you think about Facebook?
Facebook is really coming along, and if you get into Facebook with the video, it's going to be a lot cheaper than Google AdWords is really placing themselves. It's crazy. At $50 a click for an attorney in Manhattan, it's gotten crazy. It's not cost effective. In Jersey here, I think I sold a practice. They were going to charge him $15 a click. It's just not cost effective. He's just not doing it.
But I want to say one other little caveat, though, because when 35-year-old millennials who do yoga 3 times a week usually don't get all on 4 implant cases. But my buddies that are all doing $3 to $5 million a year in an implant practice, direct mail to people that are over 65 is still it's their whole gravy train. And then the orthodontist, who are targeting kids in high school and their young yuppie mommies, Instagram is killing it the best. And I think everybody should be really going into Instagram, because I'll tell you what's going on. Right now, the average organic feed on a Facebook post is 6.5%. So if you make a post on Facebook and your dental office has 100 people following you, only 6.5 are going to see that. The only direct feed still in existence is Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And Mark Zuckerberg paid $1 billion for Instagram, and he's going to change that to pay to play and get rid of the direct feed, but he's not doing it until Snapchat is dead. Snapchat went public. Twitter and Snapchat, their trading price is half what their IPO price is, but he does not want to screw with the golden egg, the golden goose laying the golden egg Instagram, until he is absolutely positive Snapchat is going to go the way of MySpace and Friendster. So right now it's a time where, like I got 14,000 followers on Instagram. I make a post, they all see it. I got 22,000 on Twitter. I make a post of this podcast, they all see it. LinkedIn, I got 36,000. Make a post, they all see it. Facebook, I got 300,000 followers. Yes. I make a post, only 20,000 will see it. And if I give them $100, they'll only bump that up to maybe if I give them $300 on this podcast we're doing, they'll only bump that up to maybe 50,000 of the 300,000. I mean, if I want all 300,000 of my Facebook friends to see this podcast you and I are doing, I'll have to give them $1,000. And so I'm saying, if you got an implant practice, direct mail. You got an orthodontic practice, Instagram. And Instagram this is probably going to be the last year where Instagram is just a low-cost free gravy train. Hey, Gary, young kids, one of the ways they're different than us is they're going to live forever. I mean, you and I know. I mean, I got 1 foot in the grave and 1 in a crematory and 1 reaching to the electric chair belt. But you always talk about how they never get adequate disability, life insurance, overhead insurance, because hell, they're 25, dude. They're not gonna get pregnant. They're not gonna get an STD. They're never gonna get injured. They're never getting in a car wreck. Talk to young kids about the importance of disability, life insurance, overhead insurance. What are your thoughts on those?
One of the most important, if you're going to focus on anything before you buy a practice, you have to understand the concept that tomorrow you could be uninsurable. And you can't get life insurance, disability, overhead. You can't get it. Nobody can think that way because they think they're just invincible. Out of dental school, for whatever reason, I got crazy about insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, get the maximum I could. Back then, it was easy to get life insurance. You didn't even need a blood test. Over like under $1 million, you didn't need a blood test. Now it's changed radically. Disability companies are far less than there have ever been. They've cut back on that, and they don't even have the lifetime disability anymore. That's been cut out. Most of them end at 65, 70. You can't buy lifetime disability that I'm aware of anymore. One of the biggest mistakes the young practitioner makes, he's so focused on the practice, the digital x-rays, the computerization of the practice. He's so focused on that, he's not thinking about marketing, advertising, and definitely not thinking about disability, life insurance. Luckily, the banks force you to have some life insurance before you buy, but most doctors should get the maximum life insurance they can right now, even if it's a term renewable, make sure it's renewable for lifetime, or you get the permanent insurance. Either way, maximize your insurance, even though you may not have the funds for it, disability, life, office overhead, and every aspect. And if you own a house, get personal umbrella right away. That will protect your cars. That's your biggest lawsuit's going to come from a car accident. That could cost $200-300 for a few $1,000,000 of umbrella. Go out, find a great insurance agent, maximize your insurance. So important.
I know. I was lucky. When I was young, I met some older dentists who had a bunch of boys. I have 4 boys, and then one of their boys could run a red light drunk and T-bone a family of 6 penguins and a nun. And it could go over millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, once you start having things like that, a big umbrella, especially if you have 4 kids. And I don't know what happened to my 4 boys because I'm completely normal and all 4 of my boys are crazy.
Great boy.
Ryan, how'd that happen? Another thing you talk about is slow buy-in transition not recommended. What do you mean by that?
It's a partnership. It is not going to work. I'm not a believer in it. Dentists, 90% of these dental partnerships I see will fight one. It may not be the 2 dentists fighting, but it could be the spouses or the cousin or the unemployed brother. Who knows? I don't believe in the slow buy-in. First of all, a dentist cannot predict exactly, a seller, when he's going to be financially comfortable to sell because things change. You can't predict the financial future. So it's either sell right now or just wait. Or if you want to continue to work, then let the buyer purchase the entire practice. Buyer owns the entire practice. You as a seller become the employee. Now the buyer is in control. This slow buy-in, I'll buy 20% and then I'll get vested after 3 years. I've seen so many instances. The seller, after being vested, everything's ironclad contracts. He says, I'm not going through with this deal. It's off. Sue me. And you got the young practitioner has to initiate a lawsuit, $5,000 to start. He's not going to do it. So I don't believe in the dental partnerships at all. And
okay, Gary, in 30 years of you doing this, what % of partnerships fail because of whatever? They divorce at the end.
It's about 80 to 90% will fail.
I know, and this is where the millennials, this is where you don't understand these throwaway magazines you read, where so many of these articles are printed because the same company bought an ad. It's right next to the article. And all these millennials, and I don't do that, and all these millennials read these messages from all these people selling partnerships and here, we'll do your partnership. It's just like marriage. Half the marriages fail, and that's when you're having amazing sex. You have children, you're celebrating Christmas and Hanukkah and Easter. You have all these social glues of everything that a marriage could bring, and it fails half the time. Now you're going to marry some geek dentist who got an A in calculus and biochem, and it's just going to be happily ever after. Are you out of your freaking mind? When dentists tell me their blues about their partner, I always say, yeah, but at least you're getting great sex from the partner, right? And they're like, what? What? No, of course not. He's a man. I'm a man. What are you talking about? It's like,
Yeah,
well,
really.
dumbass. I mean, a 4-year-old could have told you not to get married to someone you don't have sex with. And yeah, there's got to be an org chart. There's got to be a 400 pound. I tell a partnership will only work if one has 51% and one has 49. The buck's got to stop
Yeah.
somewhere. And if you got two
It doesn't work.
4.0s from biochemistry class, and one wants to go into cosmetic practice and buy a CAD cam, and one wants to go implant and
That's
all.
right.
And then the other thing here's the most confusing thing to Homo sapien that goes all the way back to Homo erectus and Erythropithecus is that the greatest religions have one God. They're monotheistic. And when you're a dental assistant and one of your doctor gods is saying go right and the other one's saying go left, the staff's always confused. And then you start splitting the staff because this assistant agrees with Dr. A and this one agrees with Dr. B. And it's just total confusion. The only time group practices work is when one doctor is an alpha bull male and owns 51% and other people are employees. Someone's got to call the shots. I mean, you look at the NFL, they have one head coach. They don't have two.
Right.
They don't have five.
Yeah.
You know, except the Cleveland Browns. They didn't win one damn game.
I agree with you. If you want somebody to be companion in the office, you don't want to be alone, hire an associate. Grow your practice, have an associate. You know, that is one of the key things. Get the associate in there, grow your practices. I always did that. I never had a partner. I had great associates. And for me, it worked out well. All 3 practices, it worked out great. But I don't want to get in an argument with anybody. Yes, I'm always moving, I'm always shaking, and I have different, when I want to take vacation, what I want to write off, what equipment I want to buy, everybody's different. And you're going to get into arguments. It will happen. There's one attorney, a firm I know, that they have an attorney in the firm, all he deals with is formation, but more so the split up of medical and dental partnerships. That's all
Oh
he
my
deals
God, I want to podcast him. What's his name?
Yeah,
Can
it's
you say-
Dennis. Dennis Alessi, I think his name is. But I will get all the information. I've worked with him several times. Every time you have another partnership breakup, time to call Dennis.
So, but off the top of your head, you don't remember his name?
I think it was Dennis Alessi. He works with Mandelbaum and Salzburg. Bill Barrett.
L-E-S-I?
I think L-E-S-S-I. He works for Mandelbaum Salzburg, but he works in conjunction with Bill Barrett, who's a very good dental attorney. And by the way, you've got to have the right dental attorneys putting these deals together. You can't have your friend, your cousin, your general attorney. You want to put the deal together, it's the right team, the right accountants, the right dental attorney, and there's not that many.
Yeah, I found it. Well, it's so sad because they're so adorable. This is the one I get the most. Well, the attorney was from my Mormon ward, and we went to the same church. It's like, okay, I'm sure he's a great guy,
Yes.
but has he done 50 dental offices?
Right,
Just
right.
because he sits next to you at church doesn't mean he knows anything about dentistry. And then the other thing, the confusing emotions, these young kids, because they believe in democracy and they don't like totalitarian dictatorships like Singapore and China and Russia. But free enterprise is efficient because it's a totalitarian dictatorship. And the reason, and everybody's always like, well, why is government so messed up? Because it's a democracy. Nothing can get done in the government.
Yes.
But the reason free enterprise can crush it is because Steve Jobs could say, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
We're doing this. And in a dental office, able to take a business and say, we're going to make a right turn at the next intersection requires a totalitarian dictator. But you get to the intersection and you got 4 partners and one saying, well, go straight, no, go left, well, no, go right. And it's just crazy. So
It just doesn't.
democracy doesn't work. There's no evidence that even democracy works. I mean, the fastest growing economies in the world are democracies, Singapore and China. And you look at the 20 great democracies, they're all in their maximum debt they could borrow. They're in maximum, we're 20 trillion in debt with 56 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Basically, the only thing democracy votes for is we're not going to vote, we're not going to make a decision, we're not going to work, and we want everything for free. And it's very, very likely that 100 years from now or a millennium from now, you're going to have no democracies.
Yeah, that's
You
great.
know,
I had a note I wanted to say. I didn't want to forget it. It's okay if I can mention it now. I often call hundreds and hundreds of dental offices. We talk about advertising. It hasn't changed in how many years answering the answering machine of these dentists. I can't tell you how many dentists on their answering machine say, if you have an emergency, go to your local hospital. It's like,
yeah.
what are you doing? Go to your local hospital. A lot of them will say, if this is a real, true dental emergency, only then, and if you're a patient of record, can you call our doctor. I'm like, what are you doing? That is one of the, you talk about advertising marketing, this has not changed, as far as I can see, in the last 15 years. As soon as cell phones came about, we answered that phone 24/7. Because of that, we got some great emergencies. A lot of them waste your time, but there's also some great ones. But it's just unbelievable what they do nowadays. They don't want to answer the phone.
You know
So
what I did when I was little? Gave every patient my business card, which then had my home phone number on it.
right,
It had the office in the home, and now it has the office in the cell. But
right.
whenever they would call home, I lived 3.0 miles from the office, had 4 boys, and I'd hang up the phone, and I'd always say to the patient, I said, "Well, you live in Ahwatukee?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna be at the office before you are." And then
That's
I'd
right.
hang, and then I'd say, "Boys, Daddy has an emergency," and they would run for the SUV, and we'd jump in there and go down there, and
That's right.
Eric would put on the patient bib, and then when we were done, since we all did good, we'd go to Dairy Queen and get
Okay.
something that promotes diabetes, and it's just called old-fashioned hustle and answering
Yeah,
the
they don't do,
phone.
of course,
Yeah.
with the PPOs. Yeah, well, the PPOs, it may not be worth it for some of them to come in, but then it runs to the fact, well, why didn't you have more fee-for-service patients?
I can't
You know?
even list all the patients who still say to me, "I'll never forget, man. It was Thanksgiving, and you
Oh,
showed
yeah.
up with Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach, and you're only in there for 10 minutes. I mean, God, you're only in there, and
How
it's
long
some
does it take?
emergency. What
Yes,
is it? Pen VK, Vicodin,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Resemat, temporary. The only one that I swear to God, when she was done, I swear to God, she just loves me so much. It was Thanksgiving, and she was cleaning her dentures. She dropped it in the sink and it split. And she had a house full of family. She was
Oh, wow.
mortified. I told her, she goes, she was calling from her bedroom. I said, just run for the car, cover your mouth, and I'll be at today's dental before you.
There you
And
go.
I went in there and just did a denture repair. Oh my God, that was the most life-saving event for this little old lady.
And she'll
That
tell
caused
so
a
many
big emergency.
She'll tell
Hey,
so many
another thing is another thing when they're thinking I'm going to sell my practice, I'm going to get $500,000. What kind of taxes are due upon that at sale? And if I buy that practice for $500,000, and now I got this big old asset. So talk about the tax implications, because what Americans always say incorrectly, they always say the most money a person will ever spend is on their house. The second is in their car. And both of those are bullshit. The average American's number one expense in the 20 richest countries is taxes. And the average American will spend twice as much in their lifetime on their taxes than they will on their house and their car combined. So talk about tax implications of buying and selling a dental practice.
Certainly. When you sell a dental practice, the sale price has to go through allocation. So there's allocation of sale price. Historically, it's somewhere between 75 to 80% for goodwill. Okay, that goodwill, that doctor is paying capital gains at 20% on that. All right. So the seller doctor wants as high a goodwill percentage as he can get, because essentially the practice is the patient's. Next, it's going to be equipment, leasehold improvements, equipment. You're at around 10%, somewhere around there. That is ordinary income. Now that Trump has reduced the taxes, it'll be a little less, but that will come in as your ordinary income, be it 25, 28, 30%, whatever it is. That portion of the sale, which is going to be equipment, is going to be taxed at ordinary income to you. So therefore, the seller wants that price for the equipment as a low number, wants his goodwill higher. It's for the buyer, he wants a higher equipment, he can rapidly write that off, and wants a lower goodwill. That's why this whole thing with dual representation is it's ridiculous, because what's good for the buyer isn't for the seller. It's like they have different value, different percentages, how they can be, how it can, tax-wise benefit one or the other. So when it comes to the sale, that 20% is the majority of the practice.
And I want to tell you this Trump tax deal, Dental Town. There's a thread on Dental Town that's 59 pages long, and there's some major league CPAs weighing on these things. But the last time, I'm 55, the last time I saw a major tax change was with Ronald Reagan, and it was with Tip O'Neill. Reagan talked about all through his campaign. He got elected in 80. I don't think they passed it until 86, 87, and it was massively changing. But if
Yes.
you want to read about what's going down on all this stuff, go to Dental Town, download your app, just put in a keyword search taxes, and it's called New Tax Plan. What does it mean to dentists? But my dad used to always say the easiest dollar earned is a dollar in expenses saved. The second easiest dollar earned is a dollar in taxes delayed. But the hardest damn dollar you'll ever make is to go do another dollar's worth of business by drilling and filling crowns, or my dad's business making more Sonic hamburgers and cheeseburgers and onion rings. But
Right.
you it's one thing to be dumb in sports or music or Trivia Pursuit, but God, you don't want to be dumb in taxes. It's your number one damn expense. You got to be smart. If you're going to be smart anywhere, be smart in taxes. I'd rather you overpaid for your house and car and underpaid on your taxes than got
Yes.
a really good used car and a really good used house, and you're just throwing away money at your accountants. And I mean, I know dentists that just go to the local chain accounting deal up the street, and it's like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
I mean, the tax code is what, 600,000 pages? By the way, do you know any tax experts on this new tax plan?
Well, there's so many. Most of the accountants will be on top of it if you get an aggressive younger accountant. But even the senior accountants, they all have the bulletins that come out. But an important point you mentioned about accountants, you need the right team, the right dental attorney, the right dental CPA. I know some dental CPAs that are outstanding. They have 250, I think, dental clients. So not only do they know the tax implications of all these dental transactions when we sell, they also have a comparative yardstick against their 250 dentists that they represent. So they know what's going on. So when you do choose a dental account, you choose an accountant, it'd be great if you have an accountant that has some level of dental experience. Because that accountant can look at his other dentist and do a comparative analysis of see where you're spending, where your percentages are, and so forth. That's very helpful. But you need
Who's your favorite dental CPA firm?
There's a great team. They're called LLI Advisory. They're out in, I believe, Cranford, New Jersey. That's
LLI Advisory.
They're in Cranford, New Jersey. I think it's Dominic
right.
and Jerry Akanawa. But they're great guys.
And
But
how many dental clients do they have?
I think 252.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, they're on there.
Yeah, well, the density of where you live is amazing. Like when I go lecture in New York City, when you fly out of LaGuardia or JFK, I mean, it's solid lights for an hour.
Yeah.
And then once you cross that Mississippi River, you can go an hour without seeing a light. I mean, when I'm flying into Phoenix from like Chicago, the next time I'll see light is maybe Kansas City, and then Albuquerque. From Albuquerque to Phoenix, that's an hour of just like you're on the dark side of the moon. I mean, it's just amazing.
No, it's a life in Manhattan is incredible. In fact, we had a professional networking organization I belong to, and we were out in Manhattan about 3 weeks ago on a Monday night. They took over the entire restaurant. It was 2 levels in the bar. It was packed on a Monday night. Had to be 500 people in there, and it was just incredible. There was nothing like the action in Manhattan. So next time you come out, we have to go out and party a little bit.
Yeah, I love it. What will my homies find if they go to your website, dentalpracticeguide.com? What are they going to find on that website?
Well, we have on there listing in 4 states right now. All of our active listings are there. Our testimonials, of course, which really speak about how hard we work and how engaged we are as brokers. In addition, gives a little bio. I think we have a small blog on there, advice for sellers. One of the biggest advice for sellers is please get the data organized. It takes so long for sellers to deliver data to us. Every buyer has this problem. Sellers take forever to deliver their tax returns, profit and loss, procedure code analysis, payroll, rent, lease. It just takes forever. So we give a little thing on there about that. I think we mentioned also what a seller should do to be prepared if they don't have a computer. Not having that data will affect the practice sale. And there's some manual things you can do to prepare for that. But so you have a variety of different information. Information is on there. Contact information to us. We answer the phone 363 days a year. We just take off Christmas and Easter. And
but that's because we're old school. My boys are always telling me, "Dad, you work too hard. You work too hard. You work too hard." You got two 20-year-old kids. I got 4 kids in their 20s. Are we just old school? We just work ourselves blind. I mean, do your two 20-year-olds work as hard as you do?
You know, they're involved. They're not in their own business, so but they still are working all the time. I think I'm Armenian, and everybody was self-employed, and my family, and my father, and my brother, so I got accustomed to it. But perhaps I like the action. I don't know. Last year I was in New Zealand, and I took a call. I'm on the cruise ship. What's the big deal? Take a phone call, speak to one of the clients, and I go back to deck 4 where they're having a party. It's not a big deal.
I can't think of too many things I'd rather be doing than taking a phone call or an email from a dentist. I mean, I just love it. I mean, I love it. I love dentists. They're cool. I mean, think of all the other businesses that your customers would be a pain in the ass. But all my customers, all my homies, they got 8 years of college. They're a doctor. 90% of them own their own business. They're usually doing $1 million a year. I mean, who do you want to talk to? Your crazy Aunt Charlene? Yeah. You know, I mean, I'd rather talk to a dentist than 90% of everyone else I know. They're just interesting people, and they're very well read. I have never spent the night in a dentist's house who didn't have at least 100 nonfiction books in his library that he's read. And then if they're not a dentist, physician, or lawyer, there's no nonfiction. It's like 50 Shades of Grey and People magazine, and then they're watching Oprah, and it's like, you know, can somebody kill me right now?
Yeah. You know, one of the other areas we didn't touch on, I'd just like to mention it now, a shortfall of some of the younger dentists. Now, especially now with YouTube, the information on YouTube, small business advertising, everything about finance, about insurance, it's all on YouTube. But you go to the supermarket, the number of people that have an earphone on, I listen to hours and hours and hours, probably over 1,200 hours a year just on the YouTube about success stories, motivational stuff. Nobody's listening. I don't see it. If you go to the supermarket, nobody has an earphone on unless they're listening to music. Nobody's listening. You could increase the capacity of your brain to such a high percentage if you would only listen. I used to listen to you, Rick Kushner, over and over again on the audio. And it was great. The practice management, you want to take it to the next level, the answers are there.
Ryan, what's the name of my YouTube channel?
I'm saying
mine's youtube.com/Dentaltown Magaziner. Thank you for the what do we have? 7,000 subscribers. That's why I don't do the typical podcast is sound only on iTunes. And I go to this great link to do the video because, number one, I just want to see the person I'm talking to. I mean, I'm feeding off the energy of your amazing, gorgeous face. But YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Dentaltown Magazine. And yeah, YouTube is amazing. I gotta tell you two freakish YouTube stories. Talking to a kid, a patient, he works on Air Force engines on these planes that are, imagine how expensive these Air Force planes are. Right. And he says the Air Force manuals, were written for this plane when they were designing it, 2 decades ago. And every mechanic in the Air Force, if you're trying to fix a tank, a Jeep, or load a missile onto a plane and you're stopped, you just open up YouTube and you say, how do you put the screw in the L-45 on an F-16 fighter jet? And there's some kid maybe stationed in another country who did a 2-minute video. So then, fast track a year before that, my car finally gets a flat where I have to change it. And, the tires, and here I got 9 years of college, and I got 2 of my sons, and nobody can figure out where the jack is or anything. And so what do? Go to YouTube. How do you change a tire on a Lexus L450 or whatever this shit. And there's a video not made by Lexus,
Right, right.
just made by some human. And the minute I saw it, like, oh, there's where it's at. Oh, that's how you do it. So yeah, YouTube. YouTube is just amazing. I mean, I'm totally addicted to YouTube.
They're there. All the answers to success are there. They've been written about or they've been lectured about, but people don't take the effort to read it. I'm talking about hours and hours and hours of listening. You just do it in your spare time while you're shopping. You're out in the yard. They don't do it.
My buddy Jared Pope decided he wanted to learn how to place implants, but he didn't know what implant institution he should go to. So every night after he went for work, he put on his headphones, went to YouTube, and Googled dental implant surgeries, and would watch like an hour every night. And within like 3 or 4 months, he was doing all of his implants, fancy surgeries, every single thing. He never even went to, he didn't have to buy a book or go to a course. And he's an amazing clinician. And he learned all of his implants on YouTube. Hey, Gary, I can't believe we went over an hour. It's an hour and 14 minutes. Love you to death. Thanks for my boys. I told all 4 of my boys today that I was going to podcast you, and they just screamed and giggled and laughed. I mean, they've known you since they were little puppies. And,
it was so cute.
Thanks for educating me so much, Kushner so much. Kushner still talks about your genius advertising from back in the day. I just saw him a little while. Next time you're in Phoenix, I'm in South Phoenix, Ahwatukee, where the poor people live, and Kushner's up there in North Scottsdale, where all the rich people live. And you come next time we're down, we'll all have to do dinner.
No question. Look forward to
right.
it. And thank you for taking the time.
All right, man. I hope you have a rocking hot day, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Howard.